Now, to discuss this and so much more, I am joined by Outkick host Tommy Lahren. Tommy, thanks so much for joining us on the U.S. Report. What did you make of this Gadsden flag saga, and just how ignorant are teachers that they don't know anything about the revolution and think it wasn't about independence but slavery?
Yeah, this is what is very concerning here. I think it's quite obvious that these teachers, these staff members, they weren't worried about disrupting other students or causing a distraction or really offending any of this child's peers. They were offended because, as we know, that Don't Tread on Me Gadsden flag, that has become kind of like a rallying symbol for conservative and liberty-minded Americans who just want the government to leave us the heck alone. And these teachers know that, so they were trying to punish a conservative kid and his parents, really, and they wanted to send a message: don't bring your conservatism to the schoolhouse door. But what they weren't planning on is the backlash that the internet got them, and so of course they had to reverse course, saying that they support free speech. But had that not been captured and had it not gone viral, I think we can pretty safely bet they wouldn't have reversed course. They would have continued to bully this kid, and they would not let him wear that patch. This is going on in classrooms across America. This one just happened to be filmed.
Well, and I mean, I bet this is a bit sort of like the Bud Light case, where it's just one little incident that shows a much bigger problem in the culture. What, though, does it say about the schools that this teacher, she was so absolutely concrete in her opposition to this and was simply going to say, well, I don't care, I'm offended, and other people nameless above her might be offended, so therefore, you know, sorry, kid, you're out of luck. This huge double standard that's going on here in the schools.
Of course, a double standard. I have a feeling if this kid was wearing a Black Lives Matter patch or a, more money to Ukraine patch or any other liberal symbols out there, wearing, 2 or 3 masks perhaps and wanting to bring COVID back, I have a feeling that these staff members would be singing his praises. But this is about their internalized issues, their internalized liberal derangement syndrome that they have, and it's an ongoing problem for them. So they were trying to take it out on this kid, but this kid, I mean, he stood his ground. He's got some great parents. He wasn't going to back down. He wasn't going to cower in the corner. So that's what we need more of. This is not going to end until parents and also students realize that they have rights, that they have a voice, that their opinions and their convictions are just as important as their liberal counterparts. It's going to take that to reverse course on all of this and set this country on the right path, set the world on the right path. This isn't just happening in the United States of America. This is a global problem. So it's about time that the people start standing up and speaking their minds. The other side can do it, so why can't we?
Indeed, Tommy, and of course, you won't be surprised to hear that we have many of the same problems here in Australia. Now, let's move over to Hawaii, though, from Colorado, where Joe Biden is facing an awful lot of backlash for his response to those horrible, devastating wildfires after he offered victims a one-time payment of $700 per household in emergency aid. Wow, what does that say about the government's priorities here? These people have been treated horrendously.
Right, especially when we're sending $113 billion plus over to Ukraine. For those people, for those non-Americans, I think that this should infuriate not only the people of Maui, but the people of the United States of America, whose tax dollars are going to fund these things. And not only that, but his response to that whole disaster in Maui is very telling. I mean, first he had no comment on the death toll. Then he finally went, after he got off of his vacation, he went to that beach that had been burned. He prefers to lay on the beach in Delaware, in a beach that isn't on fire. But then he goes and he tries to relate to the victims of a wildfire by talking about a kitchen fire that he had in his home that by all reports was put out in 20 minutes. I mean, talk about tone deaf. And this president repeated it again this week, that same story. So apparently his advisors are not advising him correctly, or maybe he's unmanageable. I'm not sure. Either way, unacceptable.
Yeah, I love the idea of Joe Biden being ungovernable there. That's quite the image, isn't it? But let's talk about the potential for an impeachment inquiry here. I talked at the top of the show about the latest bit of information to drip out about Joe Biden's emails and his secret email accounts and all of that. I mean, it has become so obvious what has been going on and what went on when he was vice president. Now, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy are talking about moving forward with an impeachment inquiry. How do you think this is going to play out? And Tomi Lahren, do you think Republicans should go forward with an impeachment, or do you think that that would be a distraction from other issues that they need to deal with?
So we're walking a really fine line there. And first of all, I would say I was really disappointed to see that Brandon wasn't one of the aliases that Joe Biden used. I mean, I think that in the United States, at least, "Let's go Brandon" is how we affectionately refer to him. So I would have preferred he use that alias. For those of you who don't know what "Let's go Brandon" is, I encourage you to Google it and find out. You'll have a good laugh. But beyond this, this is going to be a difficult spot because I think the American people are really getting tired of investigations and indictments and impeachment. So I do think Republicans run the risk of nauseating the voter base if they were to move forward with this. But then on the other hand, the Democrats do it night, day, and afternoon. But unfortunately, Republicans don't seem to go for it. We don't have the intestinal fortitude to do it. So we're in a really tough spot. I think we're going to have to look, and we're going to have to look at the polling on this and see if the American people do want to see an impeachment, if they want to see that kind of proceeding, or if they want Republicans to just talk about getting the economy back together, securing our border, maybe cutting off some funding to Ukraine. I think maybe those are the things we should focus on, but we should be able to do both at the same time. I'm just not sure we're there yet.
Well, sure, but I mean, one of the issues, too, you have with trying to mount an impeachment is the media. And, of course, Democrats used impeachment against Trump a couple of times, and they had the media behind them. They fell on their face with it every time they tried it. But this time, of course, you mentioned the cost of living. How much is the Bidenomics program hurting ordinary Americans? And ultimately, like with all the culture wars and everything that Republicans like to talk about, does it ultimately going to have to come down to that hip pocket issue of how poorly Americans are doing under Joe Biden's policies?
It's going to come down to families. And I think that that can encompass not only the economy, but also some of those culture war, social issues that families are facing right now. You know, we just talked about this kid in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Parental rights and parental freedoms, that is going to be on the ballot in 2024, and Republicans are smart to advance it. However, we are going to have to focus a lot of our attention on the economy, on fuel prices, on bringing back American energy independence. That's going to be a cornerstone of the platform and the cornerstone of what the Republican ballot should look like in 2024. But I think also pointing out this two-tiered system of justice, when you've got Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and you have all this evidence just mounting, we're tripping over evidence at this point from the Biden crime family, and Americans aren't seeing any accountability. So I think that there is going to have to be continued investigations. We're going to need to catch them red-handed because just the evidence we have so far apparently isn't enough. I think that the House oversight is going to have to continue with this. We know that James Comer and Jim Jordan are working fiercely at this. So I think let their investigations continue. Let's gather more evidence. But at the same time, let's focus on the kitchen table issues because we've got to get America back on track first.